it goes down to the not one model fits all. If there's a really large, giant centralized district and the community wants to have a more localized district, then I'm okay with that. I mean, going back and forth in Georgia, used to have that ability. The Constitution was changed, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago to have no more city school districts. But at this time, again, with trying to move education more local and more diverse, I think that's actually a good idea. It actually passed Education Committee, but they got hung up in rules. It's a constitutional amendment, so it's a very high bar in the legislature.
Dave?
I guess this is for Mike too. One of the pushback from teachers came because there were no teachers on the Reform Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And now I believe that the governor is going to appoint a teacher group to review the recommendations. Can you speak to that?
Well, there were two, these former teachers. In fact, my subcommittee was chaired by a teacher from Appleton County, the Georgia Teacher of the Year. And she had just moved to sort of doing learning, sort of teacher coaching, but she was an active teacher, and there was a retired teacher as well. So, but yes, of the 30-something people, there was only two quasi-active teachers. So, yes, the governor's going to make a teacher advisory council that's going to try to take the recommendations and try to, weigh in on their thoughts of it. I will say, though, that my subcommittee went all over the state and took all kinds of inputs and surveys from teachers. So I think it was a mischaracterization to say that we weren't listening to all the teachers. As we pointed out, a lot of times it's tough because the teachers are only, they're nervous about any changes because they know their current system. And so sometimes it's difficult to get their buy-in. But yes, I support doing sort of a round two with more teachers.
Follow up to that.
Yeah.
The state superintendent had an online survey of teachers.
Yeah.
And it was devastating. Only 3% would encourage their students to become teachers.
Yeah. We got that same feedback as well, and that's why we're trying to look at some things to make recommendations to help that. One was a recommendation there's no more laws or rules that add more burden on the teacher in the classroom was a recommendation. 1 year student teaching is a recommendation that is 6 months. To reimburse teachers who host student teaching, to actually make rural funding mentor programs to get teachers up and running. We did have some recommendations in that 80-page report that were direct on that. We knew that if we did our own surveys, we knew that the teacher morale was probably at an all-time low. And the recommendation to slow down the curriculum changes, because when the curriculum changes all the time, the teachers get tired and they feel like they never can get ahead. So there was some things buried in that report, and the fact that merit pay just kind of blew up and was all about merit pay, that was a one sentence in an 80-something page report. And a lot of the things actually were, and a lot of the teachers groups have really supported some of the recommendations that are in that report.
Yeah.
I was at my legislators' town hall meeting last night in East Cobb County, and Hunter's pension reform bill came up, so congratulations on that. I think that's one way to encourage more teachers to enter the profession. But my question is actually about the opportunity school districts. The overwhelming discussion and feeling at the town hall was that they didn't want the opportunity school district a referendum to pass, and I found that really interesting. Obviously, failing schools is not a problem in East Cobb County, but they were concerned about the lack of community control. Now, I have my own feelings about that, but what do you say about the lack of community control in the takeover of failing schools and school districts? And that's anybody.
Well, I'll start, and then I wanted to address another issue too, and then I'll remind everybody that she wants to talk about opportunity school districts. But it's a difficult situation because the governor was operating from the standpoint of these schools are failing year over year over year, and nothing's getting done by the locals. So but I also understand the concern of people in East Cobb who have very well-run schools, and they don't like the notion that we're giving potentially the state or the governor or anybody else the ability to potentially overtake their schools should they take a slight turn in the wrong direction. But the reality is you have to fail, I think, 3 consecutive years, and it's got to be something that I don't think would happen in East Cobb. But people are naturally concerned because it's the state coming in and taking something over. But here's the reality. They're getting removed from some of the regulations when they get to take it over. So they're going to be able to do more hiring and firing that current school districts are constrained in doing. And I think that's sort of the rub. I mean, one of the arguments I had with the administration through the process was, well, why don't we just reduce the regulations for everyone, and then that might help the locals be able to solve the problem themselves. That argument didn't win the day, but the reality is you're going to get some new leadership with less regulations, then it will be handed off over time back to the locals. But on the issue of teachers and pay, really quickly, last year I did the retirement bill, and it didn't get heard. But here's the problem: we're having a mass exodus of teachers at about year 5, between 1 through 5, and you don't vest in the retirement system until 10. Essentially, the school system with the old model is saying you don't necessarily count or matter as much until you've been here 10 years or more. And that's the wrong way. We need to change the way that compensation is done. We need to pay teachers more on the front end, but we need to pay them for excellence. And that was the intent on merit pay. And it's a long conversation that needs to be had, but it's about over-regulating teachers and not paying them enough, not showing them that we value them enough in the short term, and that's why they're leaving. And an attempt to change that policy on retirement and allowing new teachers to have a 401k, I couldn't even get a second in a committee with a bunch of Republicans. So, shut down.
Real quick data that I tried that in the Education Reform Commission to get his pension thing too, and I got shut down right out of the gate as well. But on the Opportunity School District, I traveled with the governor and his team to New Orleans during that whole legislative session. And we learned a lesson, and I know how the governor tends to approach this. It's not to run the school from Atlanta with a bunch of bureaucrats who don't know anything of what's going on in Macon or whatever. The absolute intent and what New Orleans said when they worked, they got local community buy-in with the local leaders in that school area and the people who are on the ground, and make a board there that is actually even more community focused than maybe the school board is at a higher level. So everybody thinks it's a state takeover, but I can tell you at least the vision of Governor Deal and his team is not to do some bureaucratic string pulling from far away, but to empower people right there in the community, give them that authority that Hunter talked about, and let them run with it.
So my question is for Representative Dudgeon, although thank you both for your support of school choice. I'm not sure what your bill says because we haven't seen it yet, but currently the SSO, the scholarship program, the way it works right now, the tax credit, is donors have the freedom to give to a scholarship organization that specializes, whether it's Grace Scholars that focuses on Catholic schools, some focus on Christian education, Jewish education, Montessori, STEM. It's up to the donors. The commission proposed forbidding that practice, creating a low-income scholarship that is specific, that has to be serving all students, and donors would not be able to restrict such donations. I'm a member of ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. We proposed that and actually voted down such a proposal, like the commission proposed, and rather said it should be free market. So really the question for you, Representative Dudgeon, as somebody who supports free market, I don't know what your bill does, but can maybe shed light on what the commission's thinking was in proposing something that would restrict donors and scholarship organizations.
The program I'm proposing is parallels existing, and the only additional restriction is around low income. In other words, so if it was low income for one of those particular flavors of school that you like, then that would be supported.
It's good to hear, but any insight in why as far as the commission, or it wasn't your vote?
Again, I don't have the governor's recommendation. One, he's not moving any of the recommendations this year, obviously, but this failed technically by one vote in his commission. So I am not carrying a bill on behalf of the governor. I'll be very clear about that. He's said, though, before, and his team has said that they support this general concept. So I fully anticipate, though, the details of this will be heavily vetted and debated and talked about. So we'll get details out here in the next day or so.
Dr. Reese.
For Mike Davis, I think that micro schools is one of the most exciting new things that we've seen coming down the pike. And I would be interested in your perspective about what are the regulations or institutional aspects that are holding you back. I mean, if you could pick one or two things that you could change that you say would really open the door for you, what would they be?
Great question. I'll be honest. As a private school, the one thing is really like tuition. You know, and so part of why I'm here and why I'm in support of the education savings accounts, you know, our approach is really about creating access. As Senator Hill stated earlier, it's the least among us that really need this type of educational experience. And so really the thing that keeps me up at night is, you know, we're starting, I'll share with everybody, we're starting with a tuition that's $8,400 a year. It's my hope that we can drive that down significantly so that the folks that need it the most have access to a high quality, personalized educational experience.
Which that is less than what the state of Georgia is spending total today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
One more. We got one more question right back here, and then I'm sure our speakers hopefully can stay a little bit and answer anybody else's questions.
So, Hunter, fast forwarding, the ESA bill passes. How is it established and how is it funded?
Well, the funding, and Mike had mentioned this, it's a net zero because the state's already paying for that child in the public school system, and that family's deciding to say, I would like to do this other choice, so the money would follow the child. So for the budget aspect of the money, from the state perspective, it would be funded by state dollars, but there would be no impact to the state budget in the short term. There could be a woodwork effect that would ensue because I don't have any income caps currently. But look, the bottom line is I want to get a hearing on this bill and can't get any conversation started and any amendments discussed until we can get a hearing. And so if income caps were to be on there, then there would be less of a woodwork effect. And what I mean by woodwork effect is kids that are currently in private school going and taking advantage of this ESA, that would be a net loss to the state. That would be a cost. But right now you have to have been enrolled in public education for the previous year, so to prevent that.
Just to answer that a little bit more, it's just the QBE funding, so it's not all the state money that's going, so the state's actually saving money, but none of the local or federal money flows either. And so actually if I have, you know, what other, you know, if you change from McDonald's to Burger King, you know, McDonald's doesn't get to keep any of your money. But in this situation, some of the money stays there, so there's actually more money per student because they have fewer kids to educate. It's more than enough to cover the fixed cost. So it's really, financially, it's sort of a no-brainer. I mean, the cost of our tuition tax credit scholarship program is about $3,200. We're spending around $9,000. So in what universe, if you're spending $9,000, it's costing you $3,200 or $55,000, is that not a good thing for everybody? So, you know, make sure you research, you know, what people are saying about this. Thank you so much to our speakers. They're doing a great public service. So hopefully they are all successful in their private endeavors and their public. And thank you all for coming. Remember, February 17th, sign up. Leave your business card if you want to be on the Friday Facts, and we'll see you next month. And hopefully we'll see you at the Capitol in a few hours.